So we have this great paradox that when humans come together, we break down or we break through. And so the question that I had when I started working on this book is, what makes the difference? And how can we do the former and not the latter in the companies that we're running, in the communities that we're part of? And so next scenario I want to go through starts with a cake. You have a group of 8 friends that you've invited over for dinner, and you've baked a nice round cake, and you love them equally, so you want to cut this cake into 8 equal slices. But it turns out that you have an enchanted magical knife that is going to break after you make 3 slices. So you can make 3 cuts before the knife disappears. So how do you make 8 slices of cake? So most people, when I ask them this question, they cut the cake in half like a pizza, cut it in half again, and then by the 3rd and final slice, they realize that they're out of slices, and this only makes 6 slices of cake. So how do you solve this problem? Well, it turns out that you can take the first 2 steps, cut it in half again, and then if you literally turn the problem on its side, cut it all the way through, you can make 8 equal slices of cake. So this is a change in perspective that 4 of your friends will get less frosting, but I think they'll understand that you love them equally. But this change in perspective is how you solve this problem. So hang on to that, and let's go back to our dinner party. With this cake, your friends want some milk, and for whatever reason, you have 3 glasses of milk and 3 empty glasses, and you decide that you need to stagger the glasses so that it's 1 full, 1 empty, 1 full, 1 empty, and so on. So no 2 full glasses are next to each other. But for whatever reason, you can only touch 1 glass. So most people, when you ask this question, they try and do this. They try and move 1 glass in between the other 2, and then you realize that there's still 2 glasses next to each other. So how do you do this? Well, I asked this question to a lot of people, and some people get it, about 25% of people get it right off. But then when I say, now pretend you're a chemist and you were given this problem, about 90% of people will get the answer that it's you just pour 1 glass into the other glass and put it back. So this is the other side of perspective of what's called heuristics. So it turns out that when you combine different perspectives and different heuristics in groups of people, really interesting things happen. So here's another little diagram. Pretend that every problem that you're working on, say in your life, say in your companies, it can be represented by this mountain range or a mountain range. And every peak is a different solution to the problem that you could come up with. But like most problems in life, we're sort of hiking through fog. So you hike until you find a peak, and then you have to decide, do we go downhill and try and find another peak, or do we decide that this is the solution that works best? Usually you don't have time to hike through the whole mountain range. So what happens with perspectives and heuristics is this. Your perspective is what drops you off on a certain part of the mountain. And your heuristic is your rule of thumb, your skill, your strategy for navigating this mountain. So say you went to mountain climbing school somewhere. I'm from Idaho. We climb mountains. So at Idaho, it says go down 50 steps before, and if the slope goes up within 50 paces, then you follow that. And if the slope keeps going down, then go back to the top of your mountain. So if you're this guy, you start on the mountain in your perspective, you go up, you go down 50 paces, nope, and you found a solution to a problem, that's okay. But little do you know that there are much better solutions out there. Now, how teamwork usually works is someone on your team has been hired with a different heuristic, a different set of skills. She shows up with a similar perspective, and her mountain climbing heuristic is, I'm going to go to the trough of every mountain and see which is steeper when I get to the bottom. Whichever one's steeper, I go up. So she goes here, she gets a little further than you, she gets to here and says, oh, it's not as steep, ends up here. And if you're a good team, then she'll shout down and say, hey, I found a better solution. Teamwork, hooray. But little do we know there are better solutions to problems out there. How breakthroughs happen is when you combine these 2 ideas, when someone else, well, the first thing that happens is most of the time in our companies, most of the time in industry, we talk about best practices. It's sort of a gang of people saying, this is it, this is the way to do things. But when someone with a different perspective joins your group, or when you listen to them and pay attention to them, it's like they start off on another part of the mountain, and they get to wherever they get, whether it's good or bad. But then when you pay attention to them and say, what if we tried combining our point of view with your point of view, our heuristic with your heuristic, and this is how mathematicians, professors of complex systems, and researchers show that different brains can actually add up to better ideas than any one person could think of. So this is the math behind how that works. It's called cognitive diversity. And this is the answer to the question. 2 heads are better than 1, but only if those heads see things differently.